let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Well, hello everybody. I know that most of you were probably waiting for a Jackson with Jackson. Unfortunately, Jackson couldn't be here tonight, and so I kind of just threw this together with about an hour's notice. So here we are. We are not going to have a guest because, well, like I said, I had about an hour's notice, and it wasn't quite enough time to secure a guest. This is going to be me, but you guys are here. You guys count. I've seen about 30 of you, so yeah, you know, me and 30 of my closest audience members. Instead of a guest, I have an NPC from my role-playing game. We had our first session last week, so there you go. We had an NPC just hanging out, you know. Let's see. So what is this that we're going to react to? It's Andrew Snelling going on Eric Hovind's show, and as you might know, I have opinions about both of these men. Not all of them bad, but most of them not very good. Let's see. This is going to be a relatively normal Tuesday show, except for the no guest part, so we are going to have the drinking rules if you choose to play along. However, heads up, you do not have to play along, nor if you play along does it need to be with alcoholic beverages. If you do in fact choose to play along and you use alcohol, please be aware that you need to be careful and drink responsibly, because the Dapper Dino channel does not accept any responsibility or liability for any harm to yourself, injury, dismemberment, death, damage to property, anything else like that of yourself or anyone else, because it's up to you to know your limits. However, we will go through the drink triggers, and guys, if I forget them, yell at me, so that way I can remember them. So first, if either of our illustrious subjects here says something that's so stupid I just kind of have to drink, I'm just going to do that. If either of them gets something correct without it actually just being a quotation from someone else, we're going to take a drink for that. Now, I'm actually expecting to do that a few times for Andrew Snelling, because while he is a completely dishonest person, he does get things right when it's not too inconvenient for him to be right. So, and he doesn't know a thing or it. Actually, he knows quite a lot. Andrew Snelling could be an actual expert in geology if he just stopped lying. Let's see. We also take a drink whenever a story that didn't happen is told. Whenever anyone mentions the goings-on of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, you know, especially in like the 20s, 30s, 40s, that kind of time frame, or their prominent members or leaders or anything like that, we will also take a drink for jokes that didn't land. There you go. That's what I'm trying to say. We will take drinks. Oh, no, I was going to say for Columbine, but that's a Matt Powell one. Let's see. We will also take jokes if I can, or sorry, take drinks. I can't talk today. I haven't even actually had my first sip of beer. It's already a disaster. All right, we'll take a drink if I make a prediction that comes true. So if I say, oh, hey, this next argument is going to be such and such, and then that is what the next argument is, we're going to take a drink. I usually only declare that if I actually think that there's a good chance that I might be wrong, but I still have my hunch. There are a few somewhat random ones. We may get visited by some of the kaiju, like Godzilla or Mothra. That might happen audibly, or if anyone here is a channel member, and you decide to super chat, if you include any of the 3 kaiju emojis in the super chat, I'll take a drink for that. And also for anyone, if you want to super chat anything to the effect that AIG are bag of dicks, you can do that. And that is, of course, because AIG like to copyright claim almost everything. In fact, right now, the video that I released last Thursday is standing at about 7,000 views. When I first uploaded it, it stayed copyright claimed almost a month. One of the reasons you guys didn't see it for so long. So, there you go. I don't think I missed any. If I did, please, someone yell at me. Do tag me, though, because otherwise I probably won't notice. And we're just going to get into this Eric Hovind with Andrew Snelling. I have not seen this before, but with these two, how could I possibly go right? Oh, And Silver Harlow, who has been a member for 2 months, sends a Godzilla emoji. So you know what? I'll take a drink. Membership anniversary chats, or I guess it's not really anniversary because it's monthly, but like whatever. Because anniversary, like it's in the word N. The N part is year, whatever. There's a drink. Okay, here we go.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Geologic column. This right here is what was developed in the early 1800s, and it was used as the scientific evidence to prove that the Earth was very, very old, much older than the Bible claimed.
It's not too far off. So it is the case that sedimentology and the evident age of the Earth contained in geology was probably the biggest evidence that the Earth was much longer than the somewhat naive literal version of Genesis, or sorry, interpretation of Genesis would have you believe. So yeah, that's. I mean, there were other things. There was like Lord Kelvin's calculations using thermodynamics, but still, I feel like geology was one of the big ones. So we'll take a drink. Also, I'm confused as to why there's so much Play-Doh on the desk, and I hope it's an interesting reason. So there's a drink for something being right. Also, we have a Shanti who's been a member for 9 months, says, El Vendedor Amarillo es un cabrón. We'll take a drink for that. Especially because there's a Ghidorah emoji. And then Ben Hovind says, does this count with Godzilla, and Mothra? And so we'll take a drink for that too. There we go. You guys are... My members are all just going to start, like, saving up their member, like, whatever number of months chats. And they're all just going to chat, like, super chat, Godzilla's at me. I'm going to have to polish off an entire beer in one go. That's what's going to happen. All right, here we go.
It was the scientific gateway.
All right, first, I just want to like take a look at like what do we actually have in here. Okay, so we got like a Spinosaurid at the bottom of this frame here. And then above that, we have Triceratops and T-Rex. That's pretty accurate. I don't know what that next layer up is supposed to be, but it is the case that we have now a saber-toothed mammal of some kind. It's hard to tell. It could be an actual like saber-toothed cat. It could be a saber-toothed nimravid, a few other things, but I mean it's roughly the right order. So good job, guys. I think that's the Is Genesis History art team.
Through which people accepted Darwin's evolution theory. After all,
No. So it is the case that Darwin's theory required a long history to the Earth, but the age of the Earth was established and accepted by essentially everyone long before Darwin. And that's why you have people like Richard Owen, who was a progressive creationist, but who was very much an old Earth creationist. So the idea behind progressive creation is that God creates various groups of fauna and flora at various stages throughout the long history of the Earth, and then for some reason he either wipes them out or they go extinct, and then he replaces them with the new and improved version. So it is the case that both Darwin and the modern theory of evolution do depend on the Earth being old, but it's not the case that the Earth being old was somehow decided on to help evolution, because like I said, this was realized long before evolution. That's not quite stupid enough for me to drink for it, but yeah, we're getting there.
if there was so much time that had passed in Earth's history, evolution might be possible. This in turn caused people to reject the authority of the Bible, and today's...
No, we're going to take a drink. Here's the thing. Most people who accept the authority of the Bible also accept evolution, right? So the majority of Christians, and since we're talking about Genesis, well, I'm going to lump in Jews because those are the two big religions that care about Genesis. Most of them accept evolution and don't feel like a literal interpretation of Genesis, say, like 1 through 11, is necessary for them to think that the Bible is trustworthy on matters of faith and theology, which ultimately is what most religions who take the Bible seriously use the Bible for. So, yeah. I know it's not going to stop, right? But I get really tired of creationists implying that theirs is the biblical view, and if you disagree with them, you have an anti-biblical view. And I hate it because it's extremely exclusionary of other people who are, in fact, members of their religion, broadly speaking, who disagree, and I don't think it's okay. So, yeah. Here we go.
So much of the secular worldview is based on those rock layers being billions of years old. However,
kind of. So one thing is, like, even if we say that radiometric dating is completely unreliable, we have to toss it out and we just ignore it. The evident sedimentology of the Earth still requires millions of years at a minimum. So there are multiple layers of rock on Earth that simply cannot be less than a few thousand years old. And they're stacked one on top of each other, miles thick, basically. Miles might be a slight exaggeration, especially in some places. But so there isn't really a young Earth option available to us in science at all. It's just off the table, not because of some preconceived notion, but because the evident physical structure of the planet does not support it. Also, the Earth could be significantly younger than we in fact do know it to be, and it wouldn't really ruin anything, right? It might make certain aspects of universal common ancestry a little questionable, like maybe archaea, bacteria, and eukaryote have like different origins or something. But the overall theory of evolution probably wouldn't be going anywhere as far as like the process is going, and it certainly wouldn't have anything to do with the age of the universe. But we do have a super chat from Erechamion, which is, I believe, how I was instructed to say that name. Let's see. He says, and then he says, not sure if I have that right. That is almost right. So it's roughly saying what's in your cup or glass, and the answer is Sam Adams Summer Ale Citrus Wheat. As far as the Klingon goes, the tach is a little odd there. It's not incorrect, but tach, in terms of like sentences with this structure where you're using a pronoun as the copula in the sentence, usually implies that there's some kind of intentionality behind the state of affairs on the part of the subject of the sentence. And since my beer doesn't really intend to stay in the glass, it's not trying to be there, I would drop the tach. Like I said, it's not incorrect. The other thing is, when you are using a pronoun as a copula in a sentence, you need to add the topic marker to the subject. So it's nuq'et. So the way I would go for it is what is in your glass? And I'm going to take a drink just because we got some pretty good Klingon. All right. Muggles Cake Sniffer says, so you know written Klingon also. Yeah, Klingon is sort of a long-running meme / gag on the channel.
that idea, the idea that they are billions of years old, is being destroyed by none other than science itself. I went out on the street this last weekend and I asked some people, hey, have you ever heard of the Geologic column? And I was going to tell them how, it was the foundation and it's being destroyed by real science. And I thought most people, they've grown up. Everybody in school has to learn about the Geologic column. It's the foundation for the old Earth worldview and for the evolution beliefs. And I thought, surely everybody will have learned this. And then from there, I can go right into the truth about the Geologic column. And then from there into the gospel. Let's hit the streets, guys, because I found out, no, not everybody knows about the Geologic column. Hey, I'm asking people today if they've ever heard.
Okay. I just have to say, I do not get the point of these man-on-the-street interviews about science. Because the thing is, they're looking for people who don't know what's going on about this particular topic. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with not knowing lots of stuff about the geological column. Like, when is that going to come up if you're not a geologist or in some adjacent field like paleontology or something? And so, you go out, you ask a whole bunch of people, and the thing is, we know on the basis of, people who have been interviewed for this kind of man in the street thing by creationists, that the people who do know what's going on, do know what they're talking about, can give cogent answers, just don't make it into these final cuts, right? So if Eric Hovind somehow managed to find, me, a big old dinosaur wandering down the streets, and he decided to ask me about the geological column, obviously I'm going to give better answers than the people who he's including, because we don't get to see his raw footage. We only get to see what he wants us to see. And I just don't understand what even friendly audiences are supposed to get out of a man in the street interview with who knows how many people cut out, who knows what the selection criteria were for making it in. So we're going to listen to it, though. Let's see what we get out of it. Maybe Eric will prove me wrong, and he will include some people in this who know a lot about geology. But I'm going to go ahead and predict that he won't, and when he doesn't, take a drink for it.
Heard of the geologic column? You ever heard of the geologic column?
I have not.
Never.
No idea what that is?
Nope.
Have you ever heard of the geologic column?
No, I have not.
What is the geologic column?
I've never heard of it.
I have absolutely no idea.
No idea?
I have no idea.
Do you know what the geologic column is?
Nope.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Do you remember ever seeing a picture?
Here, real quick, Eric, on the off chance that you ever watch this, you are allowed to clean up your audio in post so that there isn't huge amounts of wind noise and lots of, tinniness and things like that. Like, you can do it. It's okay. No one's going to come and complain to you. In fact, I might thank you because this audio quality is awful.
In school of all the layers to the earth, not like the core and the mantle and the crust, but like at the Grand Canyon, all those different layers.
Oh, yeah.
So you've seen all those. The what now?
Like sediment?
Yeah, all the different layers of sediment. When we put those together from around the world, we call that the geologic column. I could not.
Okay, yeah. Great. You found a whole bunch of people who, unsurprisingly, don't know some weird thing about, well, it's not a weird thing, it's a big thing about geology, but granted, geology isn't exactly something everyone knows about. Congrats, Eric. I'm just taking a drink. Liz D says, have you ever heard of how Eric stole his dad's ministry? I do. I have heard about it. So the quick story goes like this. When Kent went to prison, Eric became the trustee of Creation Science Evangelism. Right. And he started his own ministry, Creation Today. As the trustee of Creation Science Evangelism, while he didn't technically own any of it, he did control all of it. So he sold all of it to his Creation Today ministry for some absurdly small sum. Like, I don't think it was even over $10. And then when Ken Hovind came back from prison, he found out that everything down to the pens that he used to own were now owned by Creation Today. And that's one of the things that was sort of the lead up to him being kicked out of his home, basically as soon as his house arrest was over, and divorced. And you know what? I actually used to feel a little bit bad for Kent because I used to think that was a pretty not okay. But then, as I've dug more into it, and it looks like Kent is probably... He's a convicted wife beater, and it looks like that probably didn't start with his third ex-wife. It probably started with... he's an admitted child abuser. He's still emotionally abusing his kids to this day. So, yeah, I don't really feel bad anymore. Ben Tovin says, should have been called Creation Tomorrow, because today is almost over. Yeah, that would have been a better name.
I believe not one person I interviewed out of a bunch of people said, oh yeah, I know what the geologic column is. I used that though and had a great conversation. I'll share a little bit more about that in a minute, but I even threw it out on Instagram, and I'm thankful that you guys out there on our Instagram page, you're a little smarter than the average on the street person.
Yeah, Eric, because it's a self-selected sample of people who are interested in the things that you talk about. So of course they're more likely to know the kinds of things that you talk about. It's kind of like if you wanted to go around, say the street and ask everyone what they know about Python scripting. And then when most or all of them are like, I don't know anything about it, then you ask subscribers to a magazine about computer coding what they know about it, and you're shocked and surprised to know that your subscribers are so intelligent I mean, they might be, but the fact that they're subscribed to this magazine is evidence that they know the thing that you talk about, which is computer coding. Shouldn't be shocking, but whatever. So, evidence reason, his audio in the Man on the Street interviews was bad. His studio audio here is pretty good, actually.
Because 40% of you said, yes, you knew exactly what the geologic column was, and 60% of you said, no, don't know what the geologic column is. So apparently we got to lay a little groundwork for what today's conversation is about. And because so many people don't know what the geologic column really is, I need to give away a book. Can we do that? Can we give away a book? Let's thank our friends at Master Books, by the way, producing.
By the way, I'm very confident that Kent he just talked to is actually his brother whom he employs. Kent Andrew is the son that, as far as I can tell, Kent Hovind likes to ignore. Yeah, because like I said, Kent Hovind is an admitted child abuser. Like, the stories he tells about being a father, in my opinion, amount to child abuse.
Of tons of great content. You can reach them by going to masterbooks.com, but Masterbooks does a great job. So this book is from them, and it's actually by our guest today, Andrew Snelling. Dr. Snelling has written Grappling with the Chronology of the Genesis Flood, and this is something that creation scientists are wrestling with. I want to give away this book today. All you have to do to get this book is type into the comments,
We're going to skip ahead through a commercial because you guys know how to get a book from Eric Hovind if you wanted one. So we're going to skip until, let's see, this might be a new subject. If it's still a commercial, we're going to continue on because this is not here for Eric Hovind to advertise on.
Movie on the Grand Canyon called Scarred Earth, and this movie we're giving away to...
Yep, still a commercial. Sorry, Eric.
Gary from Iowa. I should have asked the girls. Sylvain. I think I got that pronunciation right. You're up in Canada, so maybe I got it wrong because it seems like a lot of things up there I get wrong. Wow, you guys got an interesting...
Oh, that was a joke that didn't land. I'll take a drink. Eric Hovind apparently is wrong about Canada a lot. I mean, you could just ask some Canadians. They're reasonably friendly. There we go.
System up there. But thank you guys for being our Creation Today partners. We love partnering with you really to help us reach the world. If you're out there on social media, our YouTube channel or one of our Facebook channels or Instagram or one of our podcast listeners, we just want to say thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind, take a selfie of you watching this webinar or it's Instagram rating. And by the way, or a guest that you'd like me to .org, Eric Hovind at Creation about. Today's guest, I'm really excited about this, guys. Chandler, I'm excited about this.
It was like a full 20 seconds of just commercials. My goodness. I mean, granted, I do commercials in my thing too. We're going to do a commercial right after the break here, so I can't complain too much. But I feel like my commercials are shorter. Maybe they're not. I don't know. Let me know.
Today's guest is Dr. Andrew Snelling. He is a leading geologist in the creation versus evolution movement.
You know what?
On the creation side, he says, look, the Bible is his authority, and he's doing an incredible...
I was going to point out, when you're doing science, you don't get to use anything other than the data as an authority. So you have to follow the data where they go, and if you decide that you have a preconceived conclusion, you're going to get things wrong unless it just so happens by accident that your preconceived conclusion is correct, which chances are it isn't, because there's way more incorrect things that you could think than there are correct things that you could think. So it is for this reason, because, you know, the Answers Research Journal, that Andrew Snelling, by the way, is, as far as I can tell, the only editor of, it's for that same reason that they have this preconceived conclusion that you're not allowed to challenge in their journal, that they're not an actual journal. They're a blog with pretensions. So, yeah.
Incredible job of going, okay, let's have this be our guide and learn about God's world through this. He's written numerous books, got lots of DVDs out there. And, Kent, what's so cool about him? What's really cool about Dr. Andrew Snelling?
He's an Aussie.
He's an Aussie. He's got that really cool accent. I probably totally messed it.
I'm going to go ahead and say that was a joke, and I'm going to take a drink for Eric's amazingly bad Australian accent. Look, if you can't pull off an Australian accent, that's okay. There's no shame in that. But, know your own limits. So, take a drink.
Up. Dr. Snelling, thank you so much for coming on the show with us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, hold on. No one I've ever heard of, including, like, Ken Ham, has pronounced this Snelling. Now, I wouldn't be terribly surprised to learn that that's, like, the proper German pronunciation, but I don't think it's how Andrew here pronounces his name. If anyone knows, let me know, because, like, this is new to me. But maybe it's right. Also, I'm seeing, like, 32 people who haven't hit like, so do me a solid and hit the like button, because it really does help the channel.
You turn your camera on, because I can't do that for you, and turn your audio on if he's still there. Ah, we got him. Awesome.
Hello.
Hey, Doc, thanks for
G'day.
joining us today.
G'day. Good to see you. Good to be with you.
Man, just anything you guys say with that accent, it automatically sounds, it's almost British. I mean, you're like right there, man. You're really close.
Yeah, be careful. We're not British, although we have our British roots like you do.
That's exactly right. And I guess both of us.
Was that supposed to be a joke about Australians being British? I can't even tell anymore. I tell you what, you guys let me know in the chat if you think it was a joke. And if it was, we'll pause and we'll take a drink. But I'm going to keep going because I honestly can't tell anymore.
Are glad we're not in England and we're not in Australia right now with everything going on. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you have.
You realize the reason why Australia was started is because you guys rebelled.
So we are the reason for your existence and for your accent. So I'm the one who made you sound this smart. That's basically what you're saying.
Well, no, not quite you. It was King
man.
George.
I'll just put it out there. Dr. Snelling, you're amazing. You have dedicated your life not only to serving God, but like every branch of science that was ever developed, you're serving God through studying God's world and educating people about the truth of his world. Are you really a PhD scientist that truly believes what the Bible says? Because there'd be people that argue that's not possible.
Okay, so that's a loaded way to answer that question. One, Andrew Snelling is in fact a PhD. Definitely has a PhD in geology. I don't think there's any reason why anyone would deny that, unless they just hadn't looked into him. Does he believe what the Bible says? Is a little complicated, because yes, he does believe what his interpretation of the Bible says, but that's not unambiguously just what the Bible says. And the reason for that is it's the same with any text. No text can be approached without an interpretation from the reader. Now, some texts are very plain, and almost all readers are going to have more or less the same interpretation. Like, if you have, like, an instruction manual for building, you know, the desk you got from IKEA, there's only so many ways you can interpret that. And obviously some of them are right and some of them are wrong. The right ones result in a functional desk. The wrong ones do not result in a functional desk. But texts as long and complicated as the Bible are not in that class. These are texts with a large number of possible interpretations, and both believers and unbelievers can take a variety of opinions as to what the most appropriate interpretation of the text is, without, like, doing so in bad faith, and without there really being an objective way to say whose interpretation is definitely right or wrong. However, I can say this. If your interpretation leads you to deny reality, and you also believe that the Bible is true in those areas, while I can't say your interpretation is wrong, you are wrong about the universe. Now, is Andrew Snelling a scientist? He has done science in the past, and he's done good science in the past. However, I don't think that he could reasonably be currently counted as a scientist, for the big reason that he has lied in contradicting himself all over the place. He has lied about just the basic physical features of rocks that he's describing in papers. He is running a journal which is in no way scientific. It precludes itself from being scientific by having a pre-concluded set of ideas that all papers must agree with or face automatic rejection. I don't even know that he's even attempting to publish in real journals anymore. I do know that after he was banned from the Grand Canyon for lying about where and how he was going to be collecting samples, he was let back in only because he started whining about religious persecution, when in fact it was because he lied to the Park Service about what he was going to do on the Grand Canyon. As far as I'm concerned, he should still be banned from research of the Grand Canyon for that reason. But it is true that he is a PhD who does believe in young Earth creationism, and he's far from the only one.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. From the very first verse, I accept God's word as literal history as written. And my
Note that you don't have to do that to believe the Bible.
PhD is from the University of Sydney, Australia. And yes, I'm a real scientist.
And we're just going to take a drink. You know what? We're going to add something. Every time Andrew Snelling says something that I have good reason to think he knows isn't true, we're going to take a drink. Which is going to be a lot. I might die. Take a drink for that.
Now, has your stand or your view, your worldview that God's word is true, has that caused any issues for you in the academic world?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, even when I was doing my PhD, my supervisor found out that I was a creationist and warned me to be very careful. And subsequent to the granting of my PhD, there were 2 attempts to have my...
Drink for Mothra. Just make sure you guys can hear Mothra. Well, I wasn't sure. If you guys couldn't hear Mothra, please do let me know. Sometimes my phone is too loud, sometimes it's too quiet, and it's hard to strike a balance. It seems to vary from day to day. I don't know if it's like the exact place I'm putting it or whatever, but yeah, let me know if you can hear Mothra. All right, here we go.
PhD taken from me.
Okay, look, it is possible for a PhD to be taken from you. Now, there's 2 ways Andrew might be going here. One way might be that he's saying that it might be taken from him in the sense that despite the fact that he put in the work to get a PhD, he was not granted one by his university. But he also might be talking about the fact that universities can revoke PhDs for gross misconduct in the academic area of your PhD. So, for instance, if you're, say, a physicist and you're caught just falsifying your data, just making it up, you could have your PhD taken away, and that has happened. There actually was one physicist who worked at Bell Labs. I don't remember his name, but he was famously on track for getting a Nobel Prize. Everyone was saying that, oh, he's going to become in the club of the most famous physicists like Einstein and Newton and whatnot. Then it turned out that basically everything he was doing was just a fraud. And his PhD was stripped. The thing is, just running a sham research journal and lying to religious people about science so that they keep their particular views on their religion, usually not enough to get a PhD revoked. Usually you actually have to do this fraud in the actual peer-reviewed literature. And the thing is, in actual for real peer-reviewed literature, Andrew Snelling doesn't do much of that. You might be able to argue that when he was dishonest about his collection methods in the Grand Canyon, that might count, but even that's relatively minor. You could still then go on and do good, honest work elsewhere as an actual geologist. So I don't think Andrew Snelling is in any danger of losing his PhD as it stands now.
So you do all the work, you do what they require, and your worldview is what they don't want to let through.
Correct.
Incorrect. So here's the thing. If there were actual evidence for a young Earth that could be demonstrated, then that would be perfectly fine, and you could publish on that in real journals. The problem is that there isn't, and so literally anything that anyone has ever published suggesting it, basically since geology started, had to have serious flaws, which means it wasn't good work. Right? You're basically now saying, oh, you got your PhD in navigation, but you have to hide that you're a flat earther. Yeah, because if you base your navigation on a flat earth, you're going to fail at it. Similarly, if you base your geology work on a young earth, you're going to fail at it. There's a reason that things like the mining and oil industry, the fossil fuel industry as a whole, use things like facies modeling, a key feature of which is accurately dating the strata in order to determine where to dig. There are hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars, US, on the line on the Earth being as old as we think it is. If it weren't, those companies that depended on conventional geology would be outcompeted by the likes of Zion Oil and Gas, the quote-unquote Christian oil company who decided to use the Bible to look for oil. Spoiler alerts, they dug like a dozen dry wells. It did not go well. Oh. And there's Godzilla.
Unbelievable. Well, this is the problem that we're having literally around the world. It's, they like to talk about peer review. It's actually, how do we keep our view what we want it to be rather than allow these other views in?
That is rich when you... Nope. Drink for Godzilla. But before I drink for Godzilla, I'm going to say, it is rich to say that there's this problem with peer review of keeping people with opposing viewpoints out when you're talking to the editor of a journal who explicitly says it will keep out people who don't agree with the pre-conclusions of the journal. Like, my goodness, taking a drink, because that is pretty dumb.
Hey, I went on a trip with you to the Grand Canyon, and it was the trip of a lifetime. I've even got a little highlight video. We hit some rapids, didn't we?
Absolutely.
Kent, can you show them that video? Check this out, guys.
There was music.
Not sure why my audio's having trouble there. We'll have to figure that out.
It sounds like they're actually playing the audio in studio, and then rather than having the audio playing in Zoom, it's just picking up from Eric's lapel mic. I think that's what's happening. Which, maybe that's a reason not to do these things in Zoom.
But it was an incredible trip. Now, you had a specific way of describing a trip down the Colorado River. I'm showing a lot of the highlights, and you said it a couple times.
Drink for Godzilla.
But I'm not sure I got the phrase right. What is it like to go down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon?
Long periods of boredom punctuated by short reigns of terror.
Okay, that's traditionally a description of war, and I'm not sure how I feel about that being applied to going down the Colorado River, because that was originally coined to talk about, people getting shelled in World War I, seeing their buddies get limbs blown off, having shrapnel embedded in their own torso, things like that, which I don't think is reasonably matched by this, but whatever. It's fine.
That's the phrase I was thinking of. You do sit on that raft for a long time, but the view, every corner is amazing, and every rapid is unique. We did in our...
That is technically true. The Grand Canyon is amazing, and it kind of has to be true that every rapid is unique because each one is formed by a unique set of water conditions and rocks and whatnot, so I guess I'll take a drink. I'm feeling generous on the things that are true because it hasn't really happened yet.
On our raft, we did scrape the side one time. I mean, we're going down a really fast rapid, and we scraped the side one time. Just to prove that he's an expert, by the way, guys, those of you joining me out there on social media, I thought I'd play a little game called Stump the Expert. Doc, are you up for my Stump the Expert game here? You don't know what's coming.
I guess I have no alternative.
I'm the host, so I get to do this. I've got my Grand Canyon River Guide book that we got when we went down the Grand Canyon with you. And it literally takes you through the entire canyon. So it shows you all the different rapids and stuff like that. How many times have you gone down
over 40 times.
How many?
Over 40 times.
40 times. I'm not going to be able to stump you. All right.
I don't know.
Let's see here. I want to.
I gotta point out, this video isn't even 40 minutes long. Eric could be trying to get the arguments in favor of young Earth creationism. Instead, he's playing 20 questions with his buddy Andy. I honestly don't know how he can justify doing this and how anyone justifies sending this man money. This is baffling to me. Like, why would you do this? This is not like a 3-hour show. This is a less than 40-minute show. I don't get it.
Find a rapid and see if you know. Okay. Do you happen to know what is before the 122 mile rapid? Which rapid is before that, but it's after the 13.5 mile rapid? Oh, there's two of them. No, it's between the 119 mile rapid and the 122 mile rapid. Do you happen to remember which rapid is in there?
Yeah, that'd be Blacktail Rapid.
Got it. Oh my word. You have really been down
Well,
this.
you made it easy.
Let's see here. Okay. Between
Blacktail Canyon is one of my favorite places.
that's a beautiful place, isn't it?
You remember that one?
I do. I went back through my pictures because I thought it'd be kind of cool to show a bunch of pictures and talk about all the locations that we went, but everybody else would be like, I just want to go. By the way, you can go to the Grand Canyon. Doc,
Hey, that's true. We'll take a drink. You can go to the Grand Canyon. How do I know? I've been there a few times. Well, a couple times? I think it's twice. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's only twice, but still, I'm going to take a drink. And yeah, Sire Quinox says this is like watching someone's vacation films. Yeah, I don't understand why we're doing this.
Absolutely.
I think I saw his name on here. He is. Nate Loper is
I saw
watching
that
us
too.
right
Oh,
now.
Nate.
And Nate, you're the man, dude. You are the man. So, Doc, you go with Nate on a regular basis with Canyon Ministries down the Colorado River. They offer 1-day excursions. They got 3-day. They got hiking trips. They got rafting trips. You got to get a hold.
Rim tours.
Yes, rim tours. And that's all through Canyon Ministries, right?
Yes.
By the way, I looked into that because I thought it would be amusing to go get a young Earth creationist tour of the Grand Canyon. It was more than I was willing to pay for someone to spout nonsense at me at the Grand Canyon. By a lot. So, I mean, hey, if you guys want to go do it, feel free. But like, I don't remember the exact prices, but I remember them being about an order of magnitude more than I would be willing to pay. Let's just say that.
Love the work that Nate is doing. He went on his first trip down the Colorado River 10 years ago, and now he's running. I think that's Nate. I don't have my chat open, so I'll get it open in a second, Nate. But man, love it. Would really encourage you guys to go to Canyon Ministries. Nate, throw that in the chat for me so I can get it right. I was going to say .com or .org. It's probably in there. CanyonMinistries.org. Go to CanyonMinistries.org and check that out. Of course, I go to the Grand Canyon as well. I'm not going with Nate yet. I got to get that figured out, Nate. But you can go to creationtoday.org/Grand Canyon. I just do one a year though, so I'm pretty limited and kind of picky about who I go with. To be
Oh, sorry, Sir Equinox. I think I said it Sire Quinox. Oh, internet screen names. Always fun. Sir Equinox. Sorry about that. I can't promise I'll remember, but I will try.
Yeah, it's in Nate's genetics and his blood, because you learn about his great uncle dying in the Grand Canyon.
That's right. So he
Just gonna take a drink. I don't know how serious they were trying to be, but if someone who's not in your ancestry dies in the Grand Canyon, it has nothing to do with your genetics. It doesn't even really have anything to do with your genetics if they're in your direct line of descent. But this one, it wasn't even that. So yeah, we're gonna take a quick drink for just ridiculous dumb statements. Also, hopefully before we get to the halfway... No, we're already past the halfway point. We haven't actually gotten to any real science yet. Sorry, guys. Like I said, I didn't watch this. I'm just reacting to this. This is why this is called Dapper Dino Reacts to Things. This is the thing I'm reacting to. This is what happens when there isn't a guest for Tuesday, apparently.
He's drawn to this place to redeem it for the glory of God. That's what's going on. Wow. Well, you obviously know about the Grand Canyon, but I'm here today to talk to you about your studies and your scientific research in the Grand Canyon that is turning...
Oh, I'm sorry. We're not more than halfway in. We're getting up to about halfway. My bad. We're almost halfway. But still, that is a ridiculous amount of wasted time on a very short video.
The entire idea that the canyon formed over millions of years, or that those layers formed over millions of years, on its head, and science today is blowing it away. Can you tell me a little bit about the research?
Caleb Sherstad for $5 says, even the phallic sax AIG wouldn't copyright claim home movies with Eric. I'm gonna take a drink for that one. And yeah, no, they probably wouldn't. That's true. Although, you know, Interstelling is in this. They might. I would be surprised, but I do think it's in the realm of possibility. Although, copyright claims are usually by robots, so you never know.
Research you decided to do and why you decided to do research in the Grand Canyon?
Sure. Everybody who's ever been to the canyon or seen photographs of the canyon are familiar with the horizontal layers that make up the walls of the canyon.
I'm gonna take a drink for Snelling here being super correct, because my goodness, you cannot walk into a single building at the Grand Canyon without being smacked in the face with a gigantic display of all the layers and what they're called and the order they go in. So yeah, it's very hard to go to the Grand Canyon and not become familiar with at least some of the major layers there.
Well, in certain places, those layers, which are full of fossils,
Most of them.
and we believe were deposited by the flood, have been bent, and they've been what we call folded, and in some places folded through 90 degrees. And those rock layers are folded smoothly. You know, and everyday experience, people know that rock is like concrete, man-made rock called concrete, that if you try to bend it, it's going to break.
So it is true that if you have some rock just sitting up on the surface and you try to bend it too much, it will break. However, rock under high pressure and high heat, which reasonably well describes the interior of the Earth, becomes significantly more plastic. It's also the case that, like all solids, there is an amount of deformation that even rocks under no particular heat or pressure will bear without snapping. Now, it's pretty hard to do this with rocks because, you know, they're very brittle on the whole, especially at the surface. But if you get a very long section of rock that's very thin, you can, in fact, bend it a little bit and have it spring back. It's not impossible. It's a thing you can do. So, yeah.
And yet these rocks haven't broken.
Okay, we're going to take a drink for Andrew Snelling knowingly lying to you. Now, why do I say that Andrew Snelling is lying here? And not just that he's wrong. Well, here's the reason. And you can actually see this, I believe, linked in Erica's most recent video about Dismantled. So take a look over there. She got the resources on that one. Ultimately, she got it from me, who got it from our friend Corporal Anon, who himself, I believe, got it from Dr. Henke, a geologist. So anyway, Andrew Snelling, when talking about the unbroken fractures, or sorry, the missing fractures, the unbroken rock of these bent rock layers, will in his publication put in low-resolution pictures of the formations in question with people oddly stationed in the video. And then you say, okay, well, I wonder why those people are there, because it's not standard practice to just have people inside your figures without good reason, right? Like if it's a paper about human anatomy, yeah, you might have a person in there. But like geology papers, paleontology papers, these kinds of things, you don't tend to just have people posing like it's for a family photo in front of rock formations that you're talking about. Well, it turns out that those people were stood directly in front of major fractures that Andrew Snelling here says didn't exist. Yeah, you can actually check the USGS, that's the United States Geological Survey, pictures of the same formations, and there are obvious cracks there. So Andrew Snelling will describe these things as unfractured layers of sediment with smooth bending, while showing you figures of them in which he has posed other humans in frame to cover up the fractures that he says aren't there. Can you see why I say that Andrew Snelling is probably the most dishonest creationist I know of? So, yeah, I'm taking a drink for just how dishonest all of that is. Snelling, if you don't like it, explain yourself, man. All right, here we go.
In these bends in the Grand Canyon. And so I knew that a lot had been written about the Grand Canyon. And I know that, under heat and pressure, it's like if you try to bend steel, you can't bend steel, but if you heat it up, it gets soft. Well, you can do that with rocks.
That's correct. Good job, Andrew Snelling. Now, apply that information that you just learned about steel and how it works for rocks to the rocks that you lie about.
I thought, well, maybe there's some information in the geologic literature, and I found that no one had really studied these folds because the implications are quite devastating for the millions of years idea. These bent layers, in fact, straddle the whole sequence of rock layers making up the walls of the canyon.
Yeah, because the kinds of pressures that result in folded strata, which is what we're talking about here, tend to operate over a large extent of land, but also over a long extent of time. So I don't understand the point that he's trying to make. It's like, oh, folded strata are common. Yeah, we know. No one is disagreeing. The kinds of tectonic activity that result in these folded strata tend to be large scale. It would be weird if it was small scale, basically. I didn't hit the play button. Here we go.
They're supposed to represent over 300 million years. And yet the problem is that you either have to have the rocks, heated under temperature and pressure over millions of years.
The Earth has been hot for a very long time. That is a thing that is reasonably well established, to put it extremely mildly.
For the folding to take place, or it had to take place when the layers were still wet and soft.
See, there's the problem. Well, first, Lloydie atheism, because I'm been informed by Lloydie himself that is what the Japanese kanji there stand for 666 yen, says, did you watch the video I sent you on Discord? I don't honestly remember. I probably did. I usually watch the videos that I'm sent on Discord. Double check with me on Discord, because yeah, I don't. Sorry, man. I watched okay, look. Today I watched at least 3 creationist videos in case I wanted to cover any of them, as well as a bunch of my videos looking for a clip that I recorded. So, like, on an average day, because I'm, active on YouTube and looking for stuff to respond to, I usually watch over a dozen videos having to do with this topic. So, sorry. I can't really remember which video you sent me, so I can't remember if I watched it. If you do describe it in the chat, tag me, and if I do remember that, I'll let you know. Otherwise, yeah, just ask me on Discord.
And what do we see? Well, we don't see macroscopically, and this is why I wanted to get samples to look under the microscope.
Oh, right. I was going to talk about layers that fold while they're not completely lithified. So it's actually not that hard to tell if a layer was folded while it wasn't lithified. There are characteristics that you can look for. One is, in fact, that, yeah, it does have fewer fractures than folded sediment that was, in fact, lithified when it folded. However, there's also other things. So, for instance, the boundary between the layers will tend to get blurred a bit because the unconsolidated sediment can mix at the boundary. So instead of getting relatively sharp delineation like you can see with the on-screen picture that Eric helpfully put up, instead you'll get sort of a mixing at the margins, which is not usually the case. Also, around those margins, sometimes some of whatever the cementing agent is will tend to concentrate into those areas because they're sort of like local pressure areas, and that will usually cause a whitish discoloration in the boundaries between layers. And yeah, when you don't get those, you have good reason to think that the layers were in fact either completely lithified or almost completely lithified when they were bent. So get bent.
We don't see any evidence of the heat and pressure that's needed over millions of years to bend those layers smoothly. The conclusion there.
Wait, we don't have the heat and pressure? I'm just taking a drink. Hold on. If there's one thing I can say about being deep, deep underground, it's that it's hot and that there's a lot of pressure on the rocks. There's a reason that humans can only dig so far, and it's not even close to through the crust. Being deep underground means it's hot and there's high pressure. And that's not likely to have been a thing that's ever been different. So, yeah.
Therefore, if that's the case, then these layers had to bend when they were still soft. But you would think after hundreds of millions of years of these layers piling up and then the bending taking place, they should have been hardened by then, because we
They were. Problem solved.
know from everyday experience it doesn't take a long time for rocks to harden. It's like...
Okay, look. Lithification time varies by type of sedimentary rock, and also, you know, by what the cementing agent is. Sometimes it's very slow, like in the case of limestone. Sometimes it can be much, much faster. It varies, right? It doesn't have to take a long time, though.
Concrete. You know, you dry it out and the cement in the concrete makes the concrete hard.
I'm just going to take a drink for a person with a PhD in geology saying, oh, because concrete can lithify quickly, rock in general can. No. Some rock can, but you can't just extend that to sedimentary rocks in general because concrete exists. My goodness, I'm taking a drink. But that also means we're taking our intermission because it's almost at the top of the hour. So, guys, I will be back very shortly. It'll probably be shorter than normal since I'm just going to do what I need to do. I don't have to wait for any guests. So, after this quick intermission, I will be right back with a quick commercial and then on with the show. Give me 1 second. I have to make sure I'm actually on the right intermission video, because boy, would that be embarrassing. Okay, yes, I think I am. And if not, oh well. All right. Hey, everybody, I am back. Thank you for hanging in there with me. Those of you who did. If not, sorry. I don't know. Anyway, like I said, we're going to start off with a little commercial. That commercial is for my Patreon. I am on a drive to try to get to 400 a month on Patreon. Last I checked, which was earlier today, I was $20 per month away. So that's an extremely small amount. I am seeing 84 people watching. If even a fraction of those people donated, I could easily get there. Again, if you don't have the money, then please do not donate. I am not looking to take money from people who can't afford to give it. I am only looking if you actually have spare money and you think that you would like some of it to go towards helping make sure that this channel is able to continue indefinitely into the future. The channel sometimes, it's actually been running at a loss for most of its history. More recently, it has been running at a slight profit, and currently it's on track to continue doing that, but YouTube is very, very fickle, and it is a significant portion of the income that keeps this channel in the black. And if anything were to change about YouTube, it could very easily go back into the red. Oh, drink from Mothrin. Yeah, so because YouTube is so unreliable, it could just plunge a channel deep into the red at a moment's notice, which is one of the reasons why Patreon is important for the continued health of the channel, because it is much more reliable. So if you do have that, please go ahead. There's a link in the description. If you don't, then just make sure you like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, comment if you like, and yeah, share the video with your friends. And here we go. Let's get on with more Eric and Andrew. Liz D says, have you ever considered lying about science? I hear that it can be lucrative. So I'll be honest, sometimes I do think to myself, my goodness, it would be so much easier to be like a fake scientist and just spout young earth creationism that I know isn't true. But I don't think it would be easier to sleep at night. I'd be able to afford way more video games and better quality booze, but I already have enough trouble sleeping at night. I don't need that weighing on my conscience. Let's just say that.
Well, it's the same with rocks.
The Sun Express for $20 US says, take my money. Thank you very much, Sun Express. I really do appreciate it. Guys, every bit really does help. You know, the light's got to stay on here at Casa Dino.
Chemicals in the water between the grains making up the rock, the sand grains, are going to cement the sand grains together very quickly. And
again, sometimes.
So that's why I set out to do this research, because I wanted to get samples to describe these rock layers, look under the microscope to see if there were effects from temperature and pressure or fracturing and things like that.
Okay, I have to drink. Again, for the dishonesty. Give me a second. Okay, Snelling. I'm going to address you directly on the off chance that you watch this. You don't get to tell me that you looked for fractures and didn't find them when your own publication shows that you hid the obvious macroscopic fractures by putting people in front of them. The Sun Express says, why is my avatar blotted out? The unfortunate reason for that is that every single color in your avatar has been detected as too close to my chroma key. Sorry about that. Basically, I'm extremely lazy with my my chat, and it's chroma keyed out. And as a result, way too many colors end up getting sort of just erased. And honestly, I don't think it should be, because of the settings that I have for the chroma key are like, they shouldn't be that aggressive. They just kind of are for some reason, and I don't understand why. Also haven't been able to fix it. So my sincerest apologies, the Sun Express. I will be looking into other options for capturing my chat that are perhaps more sophisticated, but also harder to implement. So it's not on the high on the priority list, but it is in the mix. So sorry about that. Yeah, that's all there is to it.
Because to rule out slow processes over millions of years and show that all the layers formed were bent when they were still soft straight after them being deposited, that's exactly what we predict based on the Bible's description of the Genesis flood.
Well, I've got somebody on Facebook that disagrees with you. Surprise, surprise. I don't know Benjamin's, pedigree yet. I'd imagine it's not quite where yours is, but
Literally no reason to think that. Benjamin on Facebook could very well be a PhD in geology. Like, there's literally no reason to think that he isn't, aside from the fact that most people aren't. But even if he isn't, his credentials don't actually matter to the science. The thing is, you don't have to have the degree to publish or do work or have valid criticism. Oh. Spring for Godzilla. What the PhD does is it makes it so that you're trained in how to do the things that get you published and that allow you to do good work in the field. But you can get that training otherwise and still do good work. There's no degree requirement for publishing a peer-reviewed paper. There just isn't. Literally anyone can do it if they have good work. Now, it's just that it's harder to know how to do the good work if you don't have the PhD. But, so it's a silly thing for Eric to point out that he doesn't know if this guy on Facebook has a PhD in geology. It doesn't matter if he does, and he very well might. Now, based on his question, maybe my mind will change to agreeing with Eric that he doesn't. Who knows?
he says, listen, guys on Facebook, hey, you can't bend rock quickly, but with time and pressure, you can deform plasticity. Scientists have demonstrated this in the lab, and we understand how it works. It's called dislocation creep. And so actually you can do it slowly with time and pressure. What do you think about that?
Well, yes, you can, but you also have the effects left behind in the rocks, the pressures. You'll also have the temperature increase.
Nebulin for $20 says, thank you for choosing integrity. Honestly, that means a lot. Thank you. I'm gonna keep going. Thank you.
You would expect to see deformation of the mineral grains, fracturing.
All of which we see. We're taking drinks for Snelling just blatantly lying.
The grain boundary sliding, and you'd also expect to find mineralogical changes in the rocks. And that's why I deliberately set out in this research not only to sample the bent layers themselves in the bends, but the same layers miles away from the bends, because I wanted to compare layers that hadn't been affected by bending with the layers that had been affected by bending to see if things were different mineralogically, texturally, because I'm well aware of what Benjamin says. Yes, it's in the literature that under pressure and temperature and time, rocks do deform.
Okay. Here's the thing, right? Snelling, again, I'm going to address you on the off chance that you see this, which you actually might, because, fun fact, my very long 2-hour-ish video, Andrew Snelling is a Liar, the movie, is actually what comes up third if you search Andrew Snelling from a blank YouTube subscription. So there's actually a fair chance that AIG actually knows that this is a thing that has happened. So they might actually end up becoming aware of this channel as a result. CMI has already mentioned me, although they then tried to dox me and ended up doxing the wrong guy because they couldn't figure out which Dapper Dino was which. Regardless, Snelling, if you decide to ever address my criticisms of you, the one thing I want before I will ever consider any of your explanations about anything is for you to tell me why there are people in front of the cracks that you say aren't there. Just riddle me this. Why is that? That's the thing that I want to know. Until that's addressed, honestly, you should be unemployable as a scientist. And even after it's addressed, if it's anything other than just, well, I didn't want you to see the cracks in the layers, because I was lying. You should still be unemployable if that's the reason. Can you guys tell that I'm not overly fond of Andrew Snelling? I don't know if that's coming across. The thing is, it doesn't take much for me to be reasonably, fond of people. Just don't be dishonest. Don't be a jerk. That basically comes out. Rembrandt972 says, how many Dapper dinos are out there? A huge herd? 2 that I'm aware of. So, technically, now my channel is Dapper Dinosaur, because when it was Dapper Dino, it shared a name with another channel that did coding tutorials. And when you search Dapper Dino, his stuff would come up usually before my stuff. And also, as a result of CMI accidentally doxing the wrong Dapper Dino, although from what I understand, his name is more, his information is more public than mine. So as a result of that, I added the SOAR onto my name to try to help keep that from happening. So yeah, there's 2 of us, and CMI got the wrong one in their very angsty article. Oh, and then Nebulon says, when I search Dapper Dinosaur on YouTube, I get ads for a kid's cartoon. Great. Maybe that's why the algorithm usually hates me. Although, interestingly, my video from Thursday is currently my 5th most watched video of all time. And it has gotten me over half of the almost 200 subscribers I've had over the past 7 days. So, fun times.
And we see temperature and pressure effects in, say, rock layers in the European Alps, where you can see the layers are bent. But there have also been metamorphosed. There's been mineralogical and textural changes. And so the question is not whether that happens.
Simbunji Coin Adventure says Snelling isn't a good representative of Australia. Please don't hold him against us. Look, I've said this numerous times. I do not consider the worst examples of a country to be representative of the population as a whole. I know in like a fair few Australians, and I in no way lumping all of you in with Snelling. And also, apparently, Simbunji Coin Adventures found me through Guts of Gibbon. Well, I appreciate it, Erica. By the way, Erica is usually on this channel second Tuesday of every month for a show about Eric Hovind here called Eric with Erica. So if you like Guts of Gibbon and you're missing those Tuesdays, you're missing a significant amount of Guts of Gibbon content, because it's not all on her channel. You have to come here if you want all of it. Well, and also on her channel. And then also on a few other channels. Whatever, I'm just saying, if you're just subscribed to her, you're not getting all the content. Speaking of YouTube-y things, do hit like on the video. It really does help.
Like that, but whether we see the effects like that in these rock layers in the Grand Canyon. And that's what the research was aiming to look at.
Well, Benjamin, there you go. He had already thought of that very point. Now,
but then he lied about it. He thought about it, realized he couldn't make that claim honestly, and then lied about it. And obviously so, like, I can't. This one's gonna kill me. I know it. I'm gonna finish all of this beer that I bought today, all in like the next 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna pass out, and you guys are gonna have to like call an ambulance or something. Hopefully not. Plus, ambulances don't really like to pick up dinosaurs. They're like, oh, you're too big to transport to the hospital. Whatever. Get a tow truck.
Doc, I need you to kind of critique how I did. I went out on the street. I asked people if they'd heard of the geologic column. Most of them said no. We don't have that clip? I didn't put that in there? I forgot to put the clip in there. Oh!
That's actually pretty funny. You know what? I'm not actually going to hold that too much against Eric. I know that it's tough to run a show even with a staff and with a producer. And Kent Andrew, Eric's brother, is basically his producer. But it's still pretty funny.
Oh, man.
I saw it earlier.
Well, I went and I ended up asking this one gentleman, I basically said, because he was presenting the old Earth worldview, and I went in and I talked about how they're bent, and if it was while they were old as hard rock, I said the heat and the pressure would have changed, and I used the word morphology of the rock. Would that be a correct term or not quite?
Metamorphism, the metamorphic changes, metamorphose the rock.
Okay.
It's like changing the caterpillar into butterfly.
Right.
It's not the analogy I would have used. I would have used more like turning dough into bread, because, in that case, it's still basically the same chemicals there, but you're using heat to transform exactly how they're linked together. But whatever, it's fine. It's a fine analogy, I guess.
So I had the right idea. I said it would change. It would literally, you would see the change in the rock, and we don't see those changing. I got my play.
So here's the thing. It's not the case that all rock bending has to result from sufficient heat to cause actual significant metamorphosis, right? That's just not true. It can help, but yeah, it's not necessary.
Play-Doh here with me, Doc. I don't know. Do you ever do scientific experiments with Play-Doh?
Not lately. I used to do as a kid, and I know some geologists do. They set up these models in boxes like that with the Play-Doh, different coloured layers, and do what you've done. Try to play with it.
Well, so yeah, I did that. I got to admit, Amanda was laughing at me, and yes, I'm letting everybody know that, Amanda, you laughed at me as I was getting my experiment ready. But check it out, Doc. I've got 20 layers. There are 20 layers at the Grand Canyon. I got 20 layers of Play-Doh, 20 different colors of Play-Doh, and you can actually demonstrate how when these are still soft, they can bend, and it won't change the morphology. That's not the right way to say it.
It won't metamorphose the Play-Doh.
It won't metamorphose. That sounds really cool. Metamorphose the Play-Doh. And so what you did, Doc, so let's bend it like that, because this is what I saw with you in the Grand Canyon.
I don't know anyone who would deny that unlithified sediments in layers wouldn't metamorphose while bending under relatively small amounts of pressure without much heat. But also, who thinks that Play-Doh is actually a good way to test what happens in geology? Okay, you know why Play-Doh is called dough? Why it's called Play-Doh? It's literally dough. It's extremely salty, basically food. It's so salty it tends not to go bad because nothing can grow on it. But that's one of the reasons why it's labeled as non-toxic, because it's basically like bread dough with absurd amounts of salt in it. It's not a very good analog for sediments in the ground. I'm just going to take a drink for thinking that literal dough is a good analogy for rock layers. Also, what would it look like if Play-Doh metamorphosed? Wouldn't it just become hard? Because that's what happens to Play-Doh if you put it in the oven. It just basically turns into hardtack. Which, despite the fact that I was in the Navy, no, I never had to eat hardtack. Thank goodness.
I saw layers of rock that were completely bent at 90-degree angles, and your research actually went in. Now, granted, this represents over a mile of dirt right here, okay? So we're
rock, Eric, not dirt. Rock. Okay.
Down here on these different layers, you went in and you took samples from right inside the curves to determine, were those bent while those layers were soft, or were those bent after it was hard rock? And that's what we're going to talk about today, because this is new.
I thought we're going to talk about that now that we're only got 12 minutes left in our 36-minute video. Eric, you really got to figure out how to more effectively use your time, my man. Come on, dude. Okay.
New leading research. I need you guys to understand something. The geology today was born in I'll call it the womb of an old Earth worldview. So 1795, a guy named James Hutton writes a book called Theory of the Earth and presents maybe the Earth is very old. 1830, Charles Lyell and others developed the geologic column, which is the layers to the earth all put together. Tell me if I get anything wrong here. And so in 1830, after people had adopted an old earth worldview, that's when geology was really born. And it was born in the idea that maybe the rocks were very, very old. Do I have that right?
Well, two points I would make. The layers do exist. That's not the issue. They are stacked up like that, like we can see at the beginning of the...
Okay, I'm actually going to give Snelling some props here. And this is when comparing him to my most frequent subject for Tuesday videos, which is in fact Kent Hovind. I'm going to take a drink for Snelling being basically right here. So real quick. So Andrew Snelling is actually someone who says that the geological column does exist. It does take on the shape and morphology, as what I'm actually going to use, that conventional science would assign to it. And that is in contrast to some people like Kent Hovind, who basically thinks that the whole thing is just made up and not based on anything. And so when I actually did my last video series about Andrew Snelling, I was actually pleasantly surprised that he, in fact, did confirm that, yes, the geological column does occur in the layers that we're given, and it does contain the fossils that we're told, because, I mean, it just does, right? All you have to do is go look, and you'll find that that's true. So, I mean, props to Snelling. I hate that I'm giving a PhD in geology props for basically the most basic facts about geology, but given that we're talking about flood geology here, you kind of have to.
In the Grand Canyon, but the millions of years is an interpretation imposed on the rocks. And that interpretation starts with the belief that geological processes have always acted the same way as they do today.
That is not too far off from what Lyell said back when he published, this first real work in geology, which is when I would say geology was born, not later as Eric would have it. But it doesn't matter. When geology was born is an arbitrary convention that people just make up. But it is actually not strictly necessary in order to conclude that the Earth is old and the geological column is a result of great age. The thing is, we have known processes that produce known kinds of rock today. And we also know that some processes that are the only way we can find to make certain kinds of rock have maximum rates that they can proceed at. And the thing is, I know that Snelling here acknowledges this to at least some degree. The reason is, when he explains what stromatolites are in the fossil record, what he points to is modern stromatolites forming in Australia today, because it's one of the few places where you can just go and see living stromatolite formations. So a stromatolite is basically a pillar of bacteria. These are photosynthetic bacteria, and they form usually in, shallow ocean water, because if it wasn't shallow, they couldn't photosynthesize. And so what happens is you have this bacterial mat, and it has this sort of matrix between the bacterial cells that kind of holds them in place. It's similar to an intercellular matrix in a multicellular organism, at least in concept. And as new bacteria come about, as the bacteria reproduce, in order to survive, they have to get to the top of the mat, relatively speaking. It doesn't have to be the very top layer, but it has to be high enough that sunlight can still filter down. But these bacteria aren't super mobile. So the ones who end up kind of getting stuck at the bottom end up dying. And then over time, this intercellular matrix will harden and turn into basically rock. And then eventually it can even become permineralized. And so the oldest fossils, the fossils lowest down in the geological column that we get, are these stromatolites. And when Andrew Snelling talks about stromatolites, he says, well, how can we tell... Oh. Drink for Godzilla. Godzilla's very busy today. So when Andrew Snelling is saying, okay, well, here's how we know that these are stromatolites, what he does is he compares them to current stromatolites in Shark Bay? It's either Sharks Bay or Shark Bay, I'm not really sure, in Australia. Because we see the same things forming today. So Snelling accepts that if you see something forming today, and you see something that is the same kind of formation in the geological column somewhere else, you can be reasonably confident in saying it formed the same way. Sometimes, when it's okay for him. So it's okay for stromatolites but it's not okay for shale or limestone or sandstone. Nope. Can't do that. And then he'll explain the flood depositions as a result of earthquakes and tsunamis. But the thing is, we can also see what tsunamite and seismite look like, which are the kinds of sedimentary rock deposited by tsunamis and earthquakes, respectively. Tsunamis deposit tsunamite, unsurprisingly. Earthquakes deposit seismite, again, unsurprisingly. And he recognizes that these are things, but that's not what we find overall in the geological column. So every single step, Andrew Snelling is accepting, actualism when it's convenient for him, which is sort of the current paradigm in geology, which says that many things are uniformitarian, but there are also, various events like floods, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, etc., that are in fact catastrophic. So we'll take the actualist approach when he needs it. Then he'll just pretend that catastrophism works when he can't reasonably take the realist approach. And he'll just mix and match with no consistency. And it's extremely annoying. It's extremely intellectually dishonest, and I suspect it's deliberately dishonest. And I say that because you can be intellectually dishonest, I think, without intentionally being dishonest. So, for instance, if you move the goalposts in an online debate or something, that's intellectually dishonest. But I don't think you necessarily have to be intending to deceive people in order to move the goalposts. I think it can be a subconscious defensive maneuver. So there is a difference there, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but either way, here's more Andrew.
And it's a deliberate rejection of the scriptures that speak of a global cataclysmic flood.
It's not a deliberate rejection of the scriptures. We're going to take a drink. Okay, a few things. It is not a requirement to take the Bible seriously that you believe that the Genesis flood was a literal worldwide event. The reason I know this is because I know a number of Christians who take the Bible very seriously and do not interpret it that way. And Simbunji Coin Adventures for $10 redo says, thank you for making science interesting and accessible. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. That's one of my goals here on the channel, is to try to make it so that learning some science stuff can be fun, and also that we can do it while laughing at some people who are, in many cases, deliberately getting it wrong. And even when they're not deliberately getting it wrong, they're getting it so wrong that it's kind of hard to understand. So yeah, I really do appreciate it. And I do believe this is the first live I've seen you on, so welcome to the channel. And also, I'm seeing as many likes as we have viewers. That is a rare occurrence, so thank you very much, everyone in the audience. I'm assuming that all of you have hit like.
So your research went in and said, we want to show that all these layers are the result of a flood. In other words, a one-year flood, a biblical view.
What a shocker. Andrew Snelling wanted to go in and see if he could confirm his pet idea that he reached for unscientific reasons. Okay. I'm working on a video series right now, and if you're not a channel member or a patron, it's going to be a while till you see it. But in it, I play a clip from Dr. Mary Schweitzer, who is a paleontologist, a former young Earth creationist, and she is the woman who most famously found the first verifiable remains of soft tissue that were not permineralized in Mesozoic dinosaur bones. T-Rex femur, she found some remains of collagen and some organic structures that were morphologically consistent with red blood cells, but that she can't really confirm are red blood cells. Okay. So, one of the things that and I just lost my train of thought about Mary Schweitzer. My goodness. I'm sorry, everybody. We'll just hit play, because I just can't.
Would make sense of the science that we see today.
Preconceived conclusions. There we go. I just need to hear a little bit of Eric, and it came right back to me. So, when she was describing how this process worked, she talks about going to Jack Horner, who was her advisor, and saying, hey, I have things that look like soft tissue in this dinosaur, in these slides that I prepared of this dinosaur femur, this T-Rex femur. But it can't be that. It can't be blood vessels and collagen and things like that. And so Jack Horner said, well, you think it is? And she said, well, yeah, I kind of do. It's like, well, prove it's not. And so what she then went out and did was try to find reasons for Godzilla. What she then did was look for reasons why she was wrong. And when she failed to find reasons for some of it, then she concluded that what she had found were the remains of original proteins from the actual dinosaur in question, because she had eliminated all the other things she could think of, like contamination, biofilms, all sorts of other stuff. Laboratory error. She went through and tried to see if it was any of those things. She couldn't. So she concluded that it was what she thought in the first place. Andrew Snelling, by contrast, goes to the Grand Canyon to find reasons to think that he's correct. If you go out to find out why you're right, chances are you're going to succeed. It's easy to find out why you're right. What's hard, what takes a lot of integrity, a lot of intellectual honesty, and a lot of hard work, but what is reliable is looking for reasons that you're wrong. If you have some radical idea that is going to overturn whatever paradigm, the first thing you should do is figure out why you're wrong about it. Because, I mean, quite frankly, chances are there's a good reason why you're wrong. Because you probably are wrong. And there's probably evidence of it. It's when you can't that now you know you have something. But that's not what Andrew Snelling does. Andrew Snelling says, well, I know I'm right about a literal interpretation of Genesis, except for those parts that imply that the earth is flat with a dome over it, like the floodgates of heaven. We'll ignore that bit. I don't have to take that literally. But other parts I do take literally. Except God stretching the heavens out like a tent, because that would again imply a dome. But we're not going to worry about that. I take the parts literally that I think are literally excusable, even though they're not. And I'm going to find out why I'm right. And then, even then, he still has to lie about it. Yeah, that's the difference between Andrew Snelling and a real scientist. Real scientists try to figure out why they're wrong. Andrew Snelling tries to figure out why he's right, still can't succeed at that, even though it's much easier, and then lies about it anyway. Here we go.
Correct, yes. In fact, some of the results that I've already published show that the layers themselves, regardless of the bends, the folds, the layers themselves, the evidence in those layers show that they form very rapidly.
Okay, taking another drink. So here's the thing. One of the biggest layers and most prominent layers in the Grand Canyon is called the Red Wall Limestone. As the name might imply, the Red Wall Limestone is a limestone formation. The reason it's called a wall is because, one, the cliffs are very straight up and down, and two, it's made of limestone. I know, shocker, right? So here's the thing about limestone. Limestone has a maximum deposition rate, and it reaches the maximum deposition rate in calm, low acidity, relatively warm water. By the way, work in progress for $4.99 US says, hey Dapper, I've loved you for a long time. Here's a $100 a month commitment. That's quite a lot. I thank you very much. That's kind of amazing. I will be double checking my Patreon to see if that comes through. Do you get in touch? And because there are things that I need to talk to you about in order to fulfill some of the $100 a month rewards. So, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't expecting that, so I'm a little flustered. Anyway, let's have some more Andrew Snelling.
So I want to get into this. By the way, Doc, I did try. This is kind of ugly. I tried to do one set where I baked it, and I baked it long enough so that we could actually break it. But look, it does kind of. You do see it tearing apart, but unfortunately,
there it is. It's tearing apart.
They've made Play-Doh way better.
Drink for Godzilla. All right, So here's another thing. If Eric here were to actually have a proper analog for rocks for bending, even though Plato is fundamentally not a very good one, he would have this under high pressure. So he would have an apparatus like this. Put both the top and bottom of this quote-unquote layer under high pressure from something that's deformable. Like, put it in a whole bunch of sand, like really, really thick sand. And then on top of the sand, put a lot of pressure, add a whole bunch of weights, just like a big old chunk of metal, basically. And then use like some kind of like a crank mechanism, basically, to push on the side of the Play-Doh. And then what you'll find is that as you crank that, the Play-Doh will start to deform like these rocks, but it will not tend to simply break apart because it's under sufficient pressure. You can do this with plaster of Paris. If you put plaster of Paris in sand, solid, under enough weight, you can get it to plastically deform and make nice, sharp folds without ever breaking, as long as it's under... Oh, drink for Malthra. As long as it's under pressure and you don't go overboard in how fast you're cranking on the side of it. So I don't know what this zero pressure baked... This is basically just dough, like bread, basically. This is just hardtack. I don't know what this baked hardtack demonstration is supposed to tell me about geology. I can't even imagine. And, yeah. So I do want to say that I have confirmed that I do now have a $100 a month per patron that just got added. It takes a little while, you know, for Patreon to process stuff. So I want to say thank you very much. By the way, I do want to say that I do have this listed with what looks like a real name. So work in progress. Do let me know what you want listed and said aloud as your name when I do my next credit scene, which will be in not that long, because I do want to make sure that I use the name that you want me to use, because I do default to whatever is on the Patreon. But if you have a request otherwise, especially if what looks like a real name is on there, then I do want to make sure that I don't accidentally use the wrong name. So thank you very much, work in progress. Honestly, it's hard to express the degree to which I appreciate that amount of generosity. So thank you very much. And that means that we did hit our Patreon goal. So congrats, everybody. Do still consider it if you have the money, but here we go.
Than they did when I was a kid, because I had this in my oven for 2 days and it did not dry out. Okay.
Yep. Well, another way of illustrating it is when you mix up the batter for a cake, it's nice and smooth and you can shape it, all the rest of it. After you put it in the oven, if you try to bend the cake, it's going to fall apart.
We should have done cakes, guys, and we could have eaten
right.
our science project.
I mean, technically you still can, Eric. It's flour, salt, and water. I don't recommend it, but like, yeah, you could, I guess. Play-Doh is safe and non-toxic. It's gonna up your sodium intake a lot, but...
People love sugar more than they do Play-Doh.
Oh, by the way, Robert Madewell has in here, Play-Doh is made of baking soda and cornstarch, 1/2 cup water, 1/2 cup cornstarch, 1/2 cup baking soda. Oh, I thought it was flour. Well, I guess cornstarch is basically fine ground corn flour, when you think about it, kind of. But yeah, there you go. Cook until it thickens into a dough. Voila. And Work in Progress says, a screen name, please. You are doing wonderful work. All right, I'm going to, if I have my pen handy, which of course I don't seem to. I was going to write that down. Tell you what, Work in Progress, send me a message on the Patreon or on my Twitter or something like that, or on the Discord, since you now are, you should be able to access the Discord. If you can't, let me know. And I will try to make a note of that. I can make notes on individual patrons. So, yeah, please do send me a message so that I have that up for afterwards, because that'll probably be something that I note down tomorrow. Because spoiler alerts, after this, if you're a channel member or a patron, I'm going to be hanging out in the voice chat of my patron and channel member Discord server so that we can watch some 90s kids TV or some more recent kids TV. We're going to watch Power Rangers because I'm a gigantic nerd. So are my best friends. So here we go.
I should have talked to you before doing this, Doc. Oh man, I should have run this by you. All right, so walk us through
You've done very well. You've done very well.
Walk us through
Congratulations.
some of the science experiments, because I remember standing and I shot a video and I put it on my Instagram page. I shot a video when we were across from the Colorado River.
Yep.
We're going through the Grand Canyon and we're right across from Monument Fold, and we're looking back at Monument Fold, and I'm going, I feel like I'm standing at a precipice in history when you're releasing your research right now that scientifically is destroying the idea that these layers were formed slowly over millions of years.
Drink for Godzilla.
And I remember looking and talking to you about these, where you went, where you got your different samples
Do it again.
from, and what this is showing. We got to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube here in just a minute, but can you give them a less than 5-minute overview of what you discovered? And then I want to go into detail with our Creation Today partners on what you've done.
Well, first of all, Eric, I found that the layers, the samples taken from the bends in the layers were the same layers miles away. There was no difference in the mineral composition, the mineral grains, the constituency, the cementing. There was no evidence of any metamorphic changes. There were no changes of the minerals into new different minerals. The minerals that were there as a result of the sedimentation were still intact. For example, one particular mineral that's very soft is mica. If anyone goes to the beach,
I have a cousin named Micah. That's not apropos of anything. I just felt like saying it. But it is true, though. Well, okay, so technically he's a step cousin, but I never really made that distinction as a kid, and so I don't really feel like it's important now.
and you see these light, shiny, silvery flakes. That's muscovite or white mica, and these were deposited in the sandstone, one of the layers I sampled at Monument Fold, where which you mentioned.
Yep.
Hey, I'm like 80% confident that that's the one that he lied about by posing people in front of, but I'll have to double check.
And these mica flakes are between the sand grains in the rock layers away, same sandstone away from the fold, and also.
Wait, did I miss a joke? All right, fine, I'll drink for the jokes, since Simbunji Coin Adventure says that there was an awful joke. Oh, it was about my cousin. Yeah, you know what? That is an awful joke. Although, still technically true. So maybe it's funny because it's true. I don't care. I'm just going to drink, because you know what? It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday is not becoming an official drink trigger. I'm possibly drinking more because I don't have a guest, and only I talk now. So, yeah, heads up, guys. Apparently Dapper Dino reacts to things is going to be even worse than my normal Tuesdays, if it ever happens again.
In the fold, and they retain the features that they had when they were laid down.
Yeah, they were not significantly metamorphosed because there was not enough heat to do so. Guys, this isn't a mystery to regular old geology, right? Like, having rock layers that bend without huge amounts of brittle fracture, although with some, which Andrew again lies about, isn't like a new thing for geology. Like, this is well explained by ordinary physics, and there are experiments that already show that this is possible. I don't know what to tell you.
Rapidly by water currents, and they haven't changed as a result of the bending. They would have metamorphosed. There would have been changes.
Yeah, if they were sufficiently heated, but not if they weren't.
In the rock textures. I'm even going to the extent of using a scanning of an optical microscope, but I've also used a scanning electron microscope to look at the cement, that is the minerals, the quartz primarily, the mineral that has grown between the layers to fill in the spaces to make it rock hard now. And these grains, if the cement grains, if the rock had been bent after the cement had formed, that cement would have been disturbed. It would have been broken. Those crystals would have broken and had to re-heal.
So there would have been fractures, like there are, and that Andrew Snelling just lies about. Yeah, okay.
But the scanning electron microscope shows that these grains are pristine. They are still.
Okay, look, I haven't seen Andrew Snelling's electron scanning microscope work. I would be interested to do so. I'll try to remember to check on it, because it does sound interesting. But as it stands right now, I'm very unlikely to believe his work on a scanning electron microscope, when, like we pointed out, he hides macroscopic cracks by just putting people in front of them and then taking blurry photos. As if the rocks were Bigfoot. They're just blurry.
Still in the form in which they originally grew to make the cement. So in other words, it wasn't depositing of the layers, then cementing, and then bending millions of years later. No, it was sedimentation, depositing, then bending, and then finally they dried out and the cement hardened. And that's exactly what we predicted. We predict from the flood, because all these layers were deposited rapidly under the flood waters, according to the Bible. They would have been still wet and soft when the bending took place, and then they dried out. So the cement crystals were the last to grow. And that's what the scanning electron microscope shows, and the optical microscope observations show. So it's quite exciting, because these bends go through all the layers that make up the walls of the Grand Canyon. So they all had to form very rapidly, which wipes out hundreds and hundreds of millions of years.
So, guys, we've been going for an hour, 50 minutes, so we're going to start calling it here. I would be fairly curious to see that. I might have to take a look at Andrew Snelling's most recent publications, because quite frankly, given how absolutely dishonest he is, I'm not sure that I trust him to report accurately on any of this, but it would be interesting to see those things. I'd also be interested to see if Andrew Snelling has an explanation for the formation called Surprise Canyon. The reason Surprise Canyon is interesting is because it's a canyon in the rocks of the Grand Canyon, but it's itself not really a canyon anymore because it's been infilled. It's what's called a paleo canyon. And so it cuts into some of the rocks in the Grand Canyon, and itself has the structure of a canyon like the Grand Canyon, with, like tributaries and, all the nice little features that you would expect from a slowly created canyon. But it's in ancient rock that, according to Andrew Snelling, was formed during the flood. So I would be fascinated to know how a canyon can form in soft sediment in the flood and then be preserved as a canyon. I'm not going to hold my breath, though. So, I want to say a very special thank you to everyone who's here, everyone who hit like, everyone who's super chat, and especially my newest patron, Work in Progress, whose extremely generous donation of $100 a month blew away the fundraising goal, or the Patreon drive, or whatever you want to call it. If you are a channel member or a patron, please do head over to the patron and channel member Discord server. We will be watching some, like I said, some Power Rangers in a bit. And other than that, I'll go through what I have coming up on the channel in the next few days. So, Thursday, the 28th, the first video of a two-part series on Kurt Wise will be coming out, in which Kurt Wise basically says, if you don't think that the... Okay, take a drink for Godzilla. in which Kurt Wise basically says, if you think that the red panda is neither a bear nor a raccoon, you're a coward. That's honestly the take that he seems to be going with. I have no idea what's happening Saturday. It might just be Evolution 101 Part 3, because Part 2 and Part 1 were the previous Saturdays. Let's see. Tuesday the 3rd. Oh, I forgot. The 27th. Tomorrow. Guns, Magic, and Steel. Cheshire Vic's channel. Check it out. It's our actual play of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It has me. It has Gutsick Gibbon. It has Science Side Up. It has Cheshire Vic. It has Bent Hovind. It has T. Lane, who you might recognize if you've been following the channel for a very long time, very closely. And it also has Erica Gutsick Gibbon's fiance. So there you go. So Tuesday the 3rd is going to be Kent with Bent. Wednesday the 4th, so that is going to be May the 4th, Star Wars Day, on my off-topic channel, Top Hats Off. We're having episode 2 of Power Rangers Jungle Beast, my Power Rangers RPG actual play. This episode is titled Mapinguari, and the first episode was a blast. I loved playing it, so hopefully the next episode will be just as fun. And then Thursday the 5th should be the second and so far final episode about Kurt Wise, in which he basically calls us a coward for other parts of taxonomy. It's kind of dumb. But that's what you expect from this channel, right? Is dumb creationist talking points that are then corrected by less dumb me. That's about as far ahead as I want to look into the channel. And guys, thank you for watching. If you're here and you still haven't hit like or haven't subscribed, do please go ahead and do that. And if you do subscribe, or you're already subscribed, do hit the bell icon so that way you're notified when there's new Dapper Dino content. And with that, I am out of here. This is the wrong credit scene.
I just want to take a
Here we
moment
go.
to thank all my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Hovind, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Chris Love, Landon Knoll, Sphincter of Doom, Star Runner, and Patrick Dennis. It's because of my channel members and patrons that this channel can keep on going at the blistering pace of 2 to 3 and almost always 3 uploads per week. And because I do run this channel at a slight loss, it is very important that anyone who can afford to and really likes my content, please do consider joining the Patreon or joining the channel with the link below. Patreon link is in the description. On Patreon, you can join at a 10% discount if you join for an annual subscription. And if for some reason you can't afford it, or an annual or monthly pledge isn't for you, there are always other ways to help out the channel. There's an Amazon wishlist linked in the description. There's also a merch store full of almost everything that Teespring makes. Heck, you can get my face on a onesie. And of course, if monetary support isn't something you can do, please just like and share this video, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget, if you're subscribed, turn on that notification bell.